the networks right now. They're talking about him. Look at it. This is the latest. Look at him. Here he goes again. Well, you know what here he goes again means? He's doing what he said he was going to do. He promised you he was going to do these things, and he walked into office week one, and that's exactly what he's doing. And he's saying, y'all do something about it. And when you try to do something about it, he's going to say,
are once again shaking things up, this time by turning the mirror on their own political home. Both longtime Democrats, they've grown increasingly vocal about how far the party has drifted from the people it claims to represent. Their message is simple but sharp. If Democrats truly want to defeat Donald Trump, they'll need to confront some hard truths and drop a few self-inflicted bad habits. These aren't just complaints, they're wake-up calls from insiders who still believe their party can win, but only if it reconnects with reality. So, what exactly are those?
That's how bad the Democrats up. Trump is cool now. He's not just the most powerful guy in the world and just made himself like the richest. He's actually kind of at 78.
Yes.
I mean, rappers like him.
Short of remarkable. Just a few years ago, the idea of Trump regaining political traction seemed impossible. Mainstream media outlets worked overtime to portray him as finished, a political liability buried under controversy and outrage. But the more he was attacked, the stronger his following seemed to grow. Every headline meant to discredit him only amplified his image as a fighter standing against a hostile establishment. Instead of being erased, Trump evolved into a symbol of defiance. Now, those who once dismissed him are revisiting their opinions, drawn in by his persistence and unwillingness to conform to Washington's carefully managed playbook. Ironically, the same media efforts meant to silence him may have fueled the very comeback they feared most.
on 34 felony counts. And the American people still said, he's closer to normal than what we see.
Exactly.
Left. That's what they're saying. He's closer to normal. Why? Because something that pertains, when you talk about the transgender community, for example, and you're talking about issues that pertain to less than 1% of the population, the Democratic Party came across as if that was a priority more so than the other issues. And so he comes into office. Now you're talking about childbirth, citizenship, and what have you. He knows that's not going to pass the mustard, but he knows that he made that promise. So when he shows up week one on Capitol Hill and he says, this is what we're going to do through an executive order, even though it's going to be shot down through the courts and what have you, he's saying, I kept my promise. A lot of other things that he's going to point to that he's going to try to do. I kept my promise.
And it remains true. Trump understood exactly what his audience cared about. He targeted the core anxieties keeping ordinary Americans awake at night: the economy, border security, and national stability. While Democrats tangled themselves in ideological debates and identity-based infighting, Trump spoke plainly about issues people could feel in their daily lives. He didn't hide behind complex policy jargon or trendy activism. He talked about paychecks, safety, and pride in the country, things that resonate deeply with the working class. Even Bill Maher has repeatedly warned Democrats about this blind spot. Chasing ideological perfection while ignoring practical concerns is a losing formula. Trump's power was never in eloquence, it was in clarity. He spoke to emotions and experiences, not talking points. That's what made his message durable and, to many, still relevant today.
You look at the left and you say, what promises did you keep? Now, you might know the answer to that. I'm certainly not questioning your knowledge about that at all. What I'm saying is what resonated with the voter. What voter out there can look at the Democratic Party at this moment in time and say, there's a voice for us, somebody that speaks for us, that goes up on Capitol Hill and fights the fights that we want them fighting on our behalf. They didn't do that. And that's why their behinds are home, and that man is back into the White House.
Orphans. They watched party leaders pour their energy into cultural debates and bureaucratic fixes while ignoring rising costs, growing crime, and a general sense of instability. Inflation hit wallets hard, the border became chaotic, and public trust eroded. Yet leadership seemed more interested in trending hashtags than practical results. Under the Biden administration, that disconnect widened further. Promises of unity gave way to waves of division and fatigue. Many working families looked around and asked, who's actually speaking for us anymore? That's when disillusionment turned into distance. And that distance has become opportunity for anyone willing to listen where Democrats have not.
Here he goes again. Well, you know what here he goes again means? He's doing what he said he was going to do. He promised you he was going to do these things, and he walked into office week one, and that's exactly what he's doing. And he's saying, y'all do something about it. And when you try to do something about it, he's going to say, look at them now. Now they're concerned about these issues. Were they talking about that during the campaign? Hell.
Party's most frustrating adversary, and for good reason. He embodies everything the party publicly rejects: bluntness, defiance, and a refusal to follow political etiquette. Yet, that's exactly why his base sticks by him. While Democrats rely on consultants, focus groups, and polished scripts, Trump talks like someone you'd meet in a diner or at a job site, raw, direct, and unapologetic. That relatability, as Stephen A. Smith aptly pointed out, makes him the closest thing to real in modern politics. People may not agree with all his views, but they believe he's sincere. In an era when institutions feel hollow and leaders seem robotic, Trump's flaws have become his armor. His authenticity, real or perceived, has turned into his greatest political advantage and the Democrats' toughest challenge.
I'm not mad
Yeah.
he won
Yeah.
because when I see, especially in the aftermath of the election, some of the things that transpired with the Democratic Party, you know, in effort to manipulate the election and the vote, it really ticked me off. When you hear people talking about practical things, and then I saw folks on the left basically trying to guilt me into voting for you, it bothered me. I might have ended up voting for Kamala Harris because I didn't like how Trump acts. But what I didn't do was call him a racist. I didn't call him a Nazi. I knew Trump before he ran for president.
Yeah.
We talked on the phone. We talk at basketball games or boxing events. I knew this man. And so some of the things that were being said about him, I knew were not true. And I was saying, come on, y'all, that you got to do better than that.
Vilifying Trump worked once, but it's run out of steam. Back in 2020, the narrative of Trump as an existential threat to democracy stuck with many voters. But over time, fatigue set in. By 2023, as inflation, crime, and division escalated, Americans began re-evaluating the story they were told. The constant fear messaging no longer matched what they saw in their daily lives. For all his controversies, Trump appeared more human, more relatable than his scripted, media-groomed rivals. Voters compared him to politicians like Kamala Harris, who often seemed rehearsed and distant. That contrast, authenticity versus artifice, reshaped public perception. What once disqualified him began to redefine him. And that shift.
My issues, democracy, the environment, have no protectors now because you blew the election. I have nobody standing up for the two issues that are my issues, which is democracy and the environment, my two most important issues. Those are not priorities in the new administration.
Threat to democracy he fears. Maher's concerns about Trump challenging certain media outlets are understandable, but framing that as a collapse of democracy misses the mark. Using the legal system to push back against perceived bias isn't tyranny, it's the system doing what it was built to do. America's design intentionally limits any one branch or leader from holding unchecked power. Between Congress, the courts, and the executive, our framework is stubbornly resistant to dictatorship. Yes, political rhetoric has grown reckless on both sides, but the foundation remains firm. This isn't a fragile democracy gasping for air, it's one constantly tested, yet consistently resilient. And that's the part Maher often seems to forget.